everybody. Welcome to our analytics webinar. I am Mary Foster. I'm new to Ambition and I am the Customer Success Communications Manager. So I am tasked with bringing you guys lots of new content like the analytics webinar today and a lot of strategy around how to best use your account. And today we're going to kick that off with analytics. And with me is Nick Love.
Hey guys, I'm Nick Love. Also new to the Ambition team, so look forward to meeting you all. I'm a product manager here, so looking forward to doing a demo here with you all.
So a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. We are going to send the recording afterwards. You're muted, but feel free to type out any questions that you might have. And you can move the images and things around, like the little video icons, in case you can't see something. So just keep that note. All right, and I think throughout the presentation, Nick may send you a couple links too, or I may send you a couple links, so keep an eye out on the chat. What we're going to cover today are best practices around data visualization, which charts work for which occasion, use cases for each chart, a product walkthrough, and then a Q&A. So really want to talk about getting a comprehensive grasp on the health of your sales organization. So you're going to need visibility into key metrics in one place. A lot of people do that with spreadsheet reporting, but the downside there is that you're spending hours sifting through data, cutting it up, whereas visual data can really help you draw insights at a glance and come away knowing what actions to take. Having a bunch of data that you have to spend a long time to look through and then still not really be sure what to do with the information is what we're trying to avoid. So that's where data visualization comes into play. It's basically using a line graph or a column chart at the right time so that you can tell a story, leverage the transparency into improved sales performance. So that's really what we want to do here today. So the different types of charts and visual graphics we're going to talk about are column graphs and line graphs, stacked area graphs, and then quadrant, or some people call scatter plot, and histogram. So each type of visual chart has some pretty specific purposes associated with it. It's not really like, oh, I just like line graphs, so I'm going to use that, or I just like histogram, so I'm going to use that. Really what you're trying to determine and figure out is going to match up with what type of chart you use. Sometimes there is some overlap where you could use one or the other, but for the most part, the specific charts have specific use cases. So if you're looking to see like the who behind correlation, that's going to be your scatter plot. If you're looking to see trends over a long period of time, it may be column graph or line graph. If it's going to be short periods of time, definitely line graph. So just learning about the little nuances between each chart here, and then some ideal purposes and use cases, and valuable reports that your team may want to access. So let's start with column graphs. When you look at a column chart, you want to be able to see performance of a single metric over time, or a single metric compared across different groups like locations, roles, or teams to see which performs best. So you may just have one metric that you're tracking standalone, or you may have the one metric that you want to compare your teams along. With column charts, you're able to quickly gauge the lowest and highest data points over a time series. You're able to instantly see what's the worst, what's the best, and then you can also compare values showing data distribution, analyzing the trends. These are all times when column charts would make sense. That's what makes them so versatile, because they do all those different things. So here we're going to look at a single metric over time. You're comparing a single KPI, which allows you to see what's working when pulling different levers to increase various metrics. So this example is an objective scorecard. And you can see in an instant that there was a big increase right there in May, creating a competition around this particular score. So that's what you're looking to see with a column chart. You can exactly see the lowest there down in February last year. You can see the highest over the summer months, and you can tell at a glance where you're doing the best, where you're doing the worst over that time period. That's what makes sense for a column chart. This is probably one of the more common charts when people look at seasonality and things like that. Month over month, those kind of things work good for a column chart. Here is a similar look, but this is where you're comparing a single metric across two groups, in this instance, location. So you can spot at an instant that Nashville is outperforming New York. You don't have to sum your spreadsheet columns to find that out. So this allows your audience to see in an instant what is going on without running a single formula in a spreadsheet. You can still see when your best day was there around the 13th of March for Team Nashville. You can see when the lowest is. You can see that the average is around 75. And you didn't have to highlight a single cell in numbers or Excel or Google Sheets or anything like that. That's where the power of the visual graphics come in. You can see the average, the high, the low, the full set of distribution, and you can tell without summing any columns that Nashville is outperforming New York. In this example, it looks a little similar, but these are two different metrics. So it's not a single metric, it's two different metrics that are correlated. So we're looking at pipeline and then closed won value. So what we're trying to see here are things like, where are we converting the most of our opportunities? And you can tell December, year over year, is the best month for this. So that's probably some seasonality around there. End of year, people are trying to use up the rest of their budgets. December is historically going to be good. This is good for your projections. It also gives you a look at how spring is a little bit of like a rougher time in terms of conversion. So what you want to do with this graph is really figure out seasonality projections of when you're going to be closing the most of your pipeline so you can make the most of your team and rally them around these times of year. So maybe it's like creating competitions in December to make sure you take advantage of the seasonality. That's a really good use case for something like this. The next graph type we want to look at are stacked area graphs. These, without a doubt, are the most helpful for comparing metrics that roll up to a whole. So they're going to give you an insight into the composition breakdown that make up a larger metric. The different segments of the metrics will stack to give you a visual of the total number, as well as an instant look into the segments that make up the total number, which is the most. So here we're going to look at a comparison of call types. Obviously, you have a rolled up number, which is the total number of calls. And you can see here that it starts off in February around, 8,000 and kind of dips down a little bit from there. What we're looking at here are calls on opportunities, really, and calls on leads. So the reason this is important here is because let's say that you're trying to rally at the end of the month and you really want to be closing out opportunities, not necessarily trying to warm up these leads. This is going to give you a look at where you're spending your time. Where are they making these 7,000 calls a week? If it's net new, great. Then we do want to be calling on leads. If it's end of the month or quarter and you're trying to close deals, we probably want to see that shift to calls on opportunities. So this is something you can kind of monitor and train your team around to get them to do these types of things, and it's all done with this visual graphic. Here is a cool one that I'd love to show, which is similar thing. You're rolling up two different segments of a main metric. The main metric being meetings set. And we historically just tracked meetings set on outbound calls. How many meetings is our team setting? And then we decided to think of an initiative around asking for referrals. So here in the stacked area graph, you can see with an instant look what that did to give us a total lift. While we're still making the majority of our meetings based on outbounding, getting those referral meetings has given it a lift right on top that really does make a big difference to the whole number. Up next are line graphs. So people are probably pretty familiar with line graphs. They're probably the most commonly used, is what it seems like, and they show trends over time. Most people know that. What we're going to talk about are percent change line graphs because they're a little bit lesser known, but super, super valuable for measuring data that are on vastly different scales. So they're most useful for analyzing trends over a period of time. When the relationship metrics that you want to track are totally different, percent change is a way to level the playing field. So for tracking smaller changes over time, like we talked about the difference with line graphs and column graphs, remember, keep in mind, line graphs are better for that too. Here is a look at a line graph that has percent change about demos scheduled, new deals closed, and digital leads. So these are all relationship metrics. They all impact each other directly. They're correlating metrics, but without percent change, it'd be hard to view them on one graph like this. So looking here, you can tell that the number of leads dropping impacts the number of deals being closed much more than demos. This gives you an idea that, like, you know, maybe your objective is demos, 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 but you really also need to be focusing on leads, 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 because as seen here, that's actually the more correlating metric to how many deals you're closing. So with the percent change on, you're able to see it because if you take a look over here, that's the same line graph, same metrics, same data without percent change on. So you can tell it's not very helpful. The main thing you want to remember is that you're trying to see in a single look the correlating data. So that's where percent change is going to be really helpful here.
Yeah, one thing I'll add real quick, when we get into the demo, I'll show you guys how to quickly toggle your data and your filters across the line graph, column graph, percent change graphs. So with the new Ambition platform, you can toggle between these without having to reselect your metrics and reselect your timeframes or filters. So something to look forward to in the demo.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to quadrant, scatter plot. People call it different things. Here I've just used one of those fun merged names. In your account, you will see it referred to as quadrant. Out there in the world, you might see it referred to as a scatter plot or quadrant. So arguably the biggest benefit of this probably in your account is that you can drill down to the who behind a lot of your metrics. So they're going to show you the individuals behind your data. They're going to show you cause and effect relationship between metrics, formerly referred to as correlation. So the correlating metrics there on your X and Y axis. Showing the distribution in a scatter plot can quickly help you spot any outliers that aren't normal behavior. So your super, super low or your super, super high reps, you're able to tell that in an instant based on the different metrics that you want to track here in the scatter plot. But then outliers can also be hidden so that you can see a normalized range of data values. Here is a look at a scatter plot quadrant that is showing average order value. So you can tell there at the bottom that we're looking at the number of new deals closed won as correlated to the money value of the deals closed won. And you can tell up in the very, very top corner there, the person who's closed the deals has closed, obviously, it looks like the most revenue. However, in the bottom left there, you can see some people have closed very similar number of deals, vastly different revenues. So if you look at the fourth dot there, it's kind of way up. It's only, showing that that person has closed one more deal than the others, but the average order value is so much higher. So the revenue is so much more. So what you're really trying to get from something like this average order value is figuring out who you might want to tap on your team to do enterprise sales, like who is constantly upselling or who is always discounting. Some of your number of deals closed over there are pretty high. Like the second highest number of deals closed is not actually the second highest in revenue. So they might be over discounting deals. So that's something to look at here when you're looking at average order value. And really identifying upsell opportunities if that's applicable to your business too. this is also the scatter plot that is looking at calls to closed won. So it's a golden report for coaching is what we like to say, because it's really, you can tell who's putting in effort with maybe not necessarily like everything coming to fruition, but the effort and the drive and the determination is there. So maybe they just need some coaching around a talk track or things like that. Or it can also show you, like in this one here, if you look at the orange dot, the person who has closed the most deals is not actually making the most phone calls. So a couple of things could be derived from that. Like what would happen if that person would actually hit their daily call numbers if they're converting at that rate? How many more deals would they be closing? Or also maybe we're actually trying to gun for too many calls and the quality isn't there. So if that's our model person and they're hitting all the goals, like how many calls are they making? And maybe we model our activity after that. You know, it kind of lets you walk backwards into learning the benchmarks there.
Yeah, one thing that's really cool, if you've used Quadrant in the past in Ambition, you probably noticed it was a cool tool, but not the most user-friendly. So a lot of the updates that I'll show you we've added a search bar to this, so you can search within the quadrant instead of picking around. And you can also have customizable frames for both the X and Y axis. So some really cool updates that I'll show you here shortly.
And lastly, I want to talk about the histogram. So the histogram is really great for summarizing data. I think it's probably one of the lesser used charts. Like I don't see it a lot in dashboards, things like that. But what's really cool about histograms is it drops your data ranges into bins. That's what the little buckets are referred to as bins. And it shows you the frequency of each range by the heights of your column. You're able to instantly spot the distribution of the high and low values like you can in some of the column charts, but also the frequency which those values occur. They're best for taking a single metric and grouping it into ranges. So if you think about it in terms of your team, it might help you automatically visualize top performers, bottom performers, and your main middle there for any of the metrics that you track in Ambition. So one of the really cool ones to look at here is closed won revenue. So with an instant look, you can be like, okay, our best people are bringing in, 17.5. It's possible to do. However, we have a lot of people bringing in on the very low spectrum, around 1,200. But right there in the middle is our biggest opportunity to see lift. With coaching those people up, and just getting a 5% lift in the middle, stats are showing that you can actually unlock 70% more value in revenue. So we have a really cool coaching guide that talks about this very thing, moving the middle, and I will chat that out at the end so that everyone can have it and take from this histogram and be like, okay, we're looking at revenue or closed won or whatever, who is really in this middle bin ranges and how could we get them to help just 5% more to unlock so much more in terms of the bottom line. And I will send you that link here.
Yeah, well, Mary sends that link. If the histogram looks familiar in Ambition, because it was previously buried below the line graph mode, we knew this was a really powerful tool, so we went ahead and made it its own mode that you can use. You can customize the metric, time frame, teams, hierarchy, all of that, which we'll look at here shortly.
And now, the moment you've been waiting for, we are going to actually show you in the account what it looks like, how to navigate, how to toggle, some cool reports that you might want to check out there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Nick take over.
All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen here. So we're going to do a quick demo. I'll go through all of the modes that Mary showed you, and then we'll look at the filters for each. But before I start, a lot of the updates that you see have come directly from customer feedback. So over the past several months and even a year, we've had a lot of customers come back with really valuable feedback, and we appreciate that. So whenever you have feedback, we'd love to hear it. All right, one of the biggest changes you'll see is in your navigation bar. There's now an analytics button over here in the left window under reporting. Previously, there were 3 buttons there that were all separate, and so now we've brought all those into one visualization mode called Analytics. So when I click in here, you can quickly see that we've made some updates to the homepage of Analytics or to the reporting tool. Here we have the filters I can look at over the past month. And the preset is to show your activity score and the objective score for your organization. Some of the updates here, you can see a progress bar here that shows, red, orange, yellow, green, depending on how each individual is performing. And we also have average the total bar here. So this is an average for the hierarchy that you have selected. So new nav, there's also a new smart title here that allows you to quickly understand what filters you have selected within that report without having to go back and forth between your filters and your view page. All right, so let's dive into the different filters that are now available. These have expanded quite a bit. So here under mode, you can see all the types that Mary just went through with you. But if we start with spreadsheet, you can see there's different data modes. There's totals, daily averages, and time series. What we're looking at now is totals. For different metrics, you may want to look at daily averages, or you can even look at time series, and that shows a value for a different period of time over, say, a week or over a month. Here, I can select customizable timeframes if I want to look at 1 day, 1 week, 1 quarter, or I can do custom, which allows me to select from a calendar, which may be a more familiar option here. For metrics, I can now select all or unselect all. This is a customer request that we've had because a lot of organizations have several hundred metrics that they may be using in Ambition. So now you can quickly select or unselect all. For hierarchy, depending on how your organization is set up within Ambition, you can drill down into any role, any team, or different territory, whatever you may need for your specific report. And then there's 2 more things down here that I'll show you within the filters. There's display smart values. This allows you to look at values that may be complex. Like if you're looking at talk time is calculated by seconds. If you toggle this display smart value, it's going to round that up to hours or days. And if this were, say, large values of money, like 200,000, it would just round it to 200K and just make it a little easier to digest within your spreadsheet. And there's also the include weekends toggle button there. And if you ever create a Frankenstein of a monster of a report and you're unhappy with it, there is now a reset button that you can click and it just gives you a fresh report so you can start fresh. All right. So that is a spreadsheet. There's also the saved reports button up here. I can either save this report and give it a name, or I can open up my saved reports window and directly find a report that I visit quite often. So we're going to look at a spreadsheet here. Okay, so you can see with this one, this customizable one, I have just the key metrics that are important to me. All right, so let's dive into a different mode now. Let's look at a graph. And we're gonna start with a line graph here. So as Mary showed you, the percent change filter down here at the bottom allows me to see several metrics at once that may have completely different scales. So if I show you, right now I'm looking at new opportunities, emails, and calls. If I take off the percent change button, you can see that new opportunities is only 124 versus a scale of 29, 30,000 over here on the y-axis. So it's really hard to tell what's driving what if there are relationships related. But if I do select that show percent changed, I can see how they change over time relative to one another. Okay. Next, we'll look at a column graph. As Mary mentioned, this is really helpful for showing how different teams or locations are performing over time. So here I can see won opportunities for 3 locations for the past 4 months. And this is where that smart title really comes in handy. If I go in here and change this to the last 4 weeks, my smart title is going to change as I play with my time series and with my time frames. And once again, you could toggle between different locations, or if I'm unhappy with a certain metric, I can go in here and change that. All right, we'll look at a quadrant next. So as Mary mentioned, the quadrant's helpful showing cause and effect style relationships. So there's some key updates here within quadrant. As I mentioned earlier, X and Y axis are completely customizable based on your needs, and so are the time frames for the X and Y axis. Typically, you'd want those to match, but you do have the flexibility to create this as custom as you'd like. And another update here, previously you kind of had to pick around to find, where was Frank within that graph. But now we have a search bar and I can type in Frank and he comes up and the dot turns orange, so I know exactly where he is. And I can also see his ratio of 0.05 appointments held versus 1 opportunities. And I can see how that compares across the organization. All right. And the last mode is the histogram. So with this histogram example, I'm looking at all of our business development reps and their new leads over the past 4 months to today. So Mary mentioned that each of these groups, they're called bins or buckets. Basically, it's grouping similar performers into one bin. So if I click on this red bin, I can see the 6 team members that fall within or fall below 496 new leads for the past 4 months. And similarly, if I click here, I can see who the middle performers are or who the top dogs are. So Larry, David, Carl, doing a great job. I can see their value. But the whole goal here is to drive that middle 70% up and to the right to increase your overall revenue, overall leads, whatever your key metric is or KPI is for that time frame. So those are the different reports that I wanted to show you all. Just remember that they all have updated filters, customizable timeframes. You can compare multiple teams at once, or you can compare multiple metrics at once, depending on the graph that you're looking at. So definitely recommend getting in there and playing, start naming your reports, saving them, and refining them as you go, because these are some really cool and powerful tools.
Yeah, and we've actually had some really great questions come in. So I am going to go back to sharing my screen. Have compiled a couple of these. Let's see here. Okay. So the first question that came in was, my question is about data input. Is all of the employee performance data being synchronized from Salesforce? Nick, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so all of your data can come from different integrations, whether it's manual or API. And the beautiful thing about this is that you can do cross-object reporting, which can be really difficult in CRMs like Salesforce. So if you have data coming from Salesforce and data coming from Cisco, you can look at those together in one graph, on one line graph, or whatever it may be.
Okay, great. And the next question was, how can I see month-to-month comparisons of multiple users at once? I'm going to take this one because I love a month-to-month report. I love looking month over month. I feel like it's a great way to summarize. But the best answer here is probably the spreadsheet view with the time series. So you can see the users month over month on different metrics. You can also group those by teams if you want to see your teams month over month or roles, things like that. But spreadsheet view with the time series. The next question was, can we export all reports, graphs, and quadrants? Nick?
Yeah, so really cool update. Right now, you can export all spreadsheets as a CSV file, but this morning we were testing with our engineers how to export different graphs, different line graphs, quadrants, whatever it may be, as just an image file if that's what you desire. So the idea there is that you could export any graph and add it to your PowerPoint or your presentation for your KPI review. So yeah, that is coming within the week, which we're really excited to test out with you.
And the last question we'll make time for before we run out here is what are the most commonly used metrics? So this is a pretty cool question for a couple reasons. One, I'll give you just the real, I'll just give you the level set answer of what I see. Phone calls, emails, LinkedIn connections, meetings set, meetings held, opportunities, closed won, probably a lot of things that you already think about. However, the best part of this answer is actually we have a really cool Ambition University course that I will link out to because it's called the Salesforce Metric Library Guide, but what it really gives you insight into is the activities, objectives, and results framework so that you can work your way backwards from your results goal, whatever it is, and then the objectives that you're typically achieving to get there, you know, the number of opportunities or the number of meetings set, and then the number of activities that lead to that. So I will send that out afterwards because I think it will give you a good insight into not only the most commonly tracked metrics, but things that are specific to your org to use. So
We also got another question from Paula. She asked, I have my talk time set as minutes. Will that work as well? And I think that probably came up during the show Smart Values section. So yes, depending on whatever you have your talk time set as seconds or minutes, it will roll it up into a more into a level that is easier to digest or to understand. Instead of minutes, we could look at hours or days, depending on the scale that your teams are doing. So yeah, be happy to show you within your instance after the call if you'd like.
And guys, get ready to live because this is live in your accounts. You can play with it now. Nick has some resources here if you need help. Zendesk, get help at ambition.com. If you have questions or things like that, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, and wanted to send a quick thank you. So if you're not familiar with Ambition's early access program or beta program, I'm sending a link in the chat right now. We would love for you to sign up. So all the people who see here, Strategic, Jump Crew, Opalones, Workfront, Single Platform, and many others all helped contribute and share their ideas for our new analytics platform. So if you'd like to participate in future beta programs or early access programs, go to that link, fill it out, and then I will be the one contacting you for that.
And we did have, I'm also chatting a couple links now, a little slow. And we had another question come in about, is there a way to edit past data if an error was made? So that's going to be something, definitely reach out to gethelp@ambition.com and they will be able to assist you there because I think there are some historical import options and things we can do, but don't want to get into the super technical weeds on that. Gethelp@ambition.com should be able to help you there, Ben. And if there aren't any other questions, you know what I didn't share was the moving the middle guide. So let me find it. Here it is, because you're going to want to check this out. Okay. Sent that through. And all this to say, we have a ton of resources, a ton of guides, but we're also working on bringing more webinars, more things like that. So if there's questions you have from a strategy perspective or things you want to learn more about or just curious about our take, we'd love to share. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. And If there are more questions that are coming in, we'll try to get to those and send out a recap email. So we'll send you the recording of this in case it's helpful. We'll answer any additional questions that are coming in, and also relink the resources to Ambition University, that AOR framework, the moving the middle, all the things. They'll come via email. So be on the lookout. And with that, I'm going to end this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.